is the topic, the future of brand marketing equals in-app mobile video. A highly relevant topic in this day of digital video consuming most of people's viewing time. But before we get started with the presentation and our special guest, I'd like to just give everybody a little update on the MMA. You know, we are the world's leading global nonprofit trade association focused entirely on mobile. We are around the world with 800 member companies. Our mission is to accelerate the transformation and innovation of marketing through mobile, driving business growth with closer and stronger consumer engagement. We anchor this mission on 4 core pillars: cultivating inspiration, building capabilities for success, which is what today's presentation will do, demonstrating measurement and impact, and advocacy. We have many members across the mobile ecosystem, including InMobi, American Express, Facebook, Google, P&G, Mondelez, BoopM, and others. Today's presentation, as always, we have the ability to answer your questions, and you can share insights that you glean at hashtag MMAWeb. But there is a drop-down menu in the control panel on your right. If you want to ask a question, just put it in there. I moderate those questions, and as our presenter goes along, if some of the questions are right on point, we might break and answer those questions, or else we'll do some at the end. But to let you know who is presenting, it's our special guest, Ann Frisbie, who's the Senior VP in InMobi Exchange and Global Alliances. She's a great partner and ally of the MMA. We look forward to hearing from her today. I'm the moderator. I'm Leo Scullin. I head up Global Industry Initiatives here at the MMA. So without further ado, Ann, welcome back.
Thanks, Leo. So good to be here and so excited to talk about in-app video experiences because I think they're amazing, and I'm great. It's great to educate folks so they can learn more about them. So just one slide on InMobi, who we are. We've built a mobile advertising technology platform over the last 8 years. We have in our user store more than 1 billion unique users that are at the device ID level or device ID-based profiles. We've built from that proprietary InMobi audience personas. And what we'll talk about today is a lot on the engaging ad formats. That's been a huge focus for us. We do integrate with publishers on an SDK basis and support native ad experiences, rich media experiences, and particularly for this discussion, video. And the video, you know, we'll talk a little bit about ad formats and really what does in-app video look like, and how does that differ from the desktop side, and kind of just try to educate people on in-app video ad experiences. So to kick things off, I was excited to see at Mexico about 2 weeks ago, Rob Norman gave a half-an-hour presentation or so called the App Ecosystem. And I think it's great that a lot of the agency buyers now are really talking about, you know, maybe just talking about the move from desktop to mobile isn't really the most important thing that's been changing, even though that's great. We're moving into these handheld devices. That we're really moving into a world run by channels, moving from a world run by channels into a world that's dominated by apps. And that it's really that change to apps that changes a lot of the things about what we do in media, whether that's, you know, users being identified, you know, not from a cookie standpoint for device ID, or from the ad experience side. And particularly we'll talk about video and maybe what that means in terms of what's different from a video ad experience side now that we're really focused on the app side. I'll go back a slide. So these are stats from ComScore. You know, in general, ComScore says that about 88% of smartphone usage now is driven by the app. Certainly, consumers have a huge love affair with apps, and a majority now of total digital media time spent, not just mobile time, is on the in-app side. And you know, a lot of the things that consumers do that take up a lot of their time are increasingly on the in-app side, and that includes video usage, which is becoming very in-app centric. So I think that these are good kind of foundational things to look at as we talk about the video in-app experience in terms of third-party usage of apps. So there was a survey that was done in the U.S., China, UK, and then globally, asking consumers about TV behaviors and mobile. And at least, you know, you can look at the relevant stats in each of the markets, but for the U.S., about 25% of the consumer of mobile smartphone video viewers that were interviewed, 25% of them said absolutely they watch less TV now because they're watching more and more of their video content on their smartphone device. So I think that we all know in our own usage that that's happening, but I think this is good data to use to make sure that as you think about using in-app video as one of your ad experiences, understand how it's affecting consumer behavior. The IAB did a recent study with on-device, a survey to talk to mobile video viewers. I thought this was really informative. I hadn't seen this stat used that much yet, so I wanted to share it with folks on this call. That 48% of people can only or mostly only be reached using mobile ads versus on the mobile website. So if you run video campaigns, a majority of mobile video viewers are really only watching videos on the in-app side of the experience, or half of them, almost a majority. And that's not true on the mobile web side. So if you only were to market on the mobile app side, you'd only be missing about 18% of mobile video viewers who only watch those experiences on mobile web. So I think as the video experience is so great on the in-app side that more and more of the audience that watches videos on their smartphones is obviously doing that in the in-app experiences. So I think this is a really great thing to share with clients to understand why executing in-app video experiences is important from a reach perspective. So now we'll get into the types of ads that are on. And this really, the rest of the whole deck is really just focused on what are ad formats on the in-app side, and what are some of the dimensions so that they help you in terms of best practices in running campaigns. So there's two types of video ad formats that are being leveraged on the in-app side. One of them is VAST. So the ecosystem on the app side has done a lot of work over the past few years to make sure that a desktop-first standard VAST can work in most of the supply that's available on in-app. So VAST video now is increasingly supported, and certainly on InMobi and InMobi Exchange that's the case. So that's true generally across the ecosystem for in-app video inventory. The rich media format for video on the in-app side is MRAID standards, and that's probably most similar on the desktop side to VPAID. But for the mobile, the standard right now for rich media is MRAID, and they're looking at how do they enhance that and extend that to kind of match some of the capabilities of VPAID. But there's a lot of rich media video ads that are run on the in-app side with MRAID capabilities. So just to try to compare things for those that are coming from the desktop side into the in-app side, I've been in digital media for 19 years. I've only been working really on in-app for the last 6 years, but it's probably good for some folks to kind of know how this compares to the desktop. So in the desktop side, you have pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll that are these linear ads that happen. You have content that you're watching, often video content. It can be other types of content. There's a commercial break in some way that happens either before that content, in the middle of it, at the end, and you have what's called a linear ad. You may be running a companion ad, and I'll show a screenshot of what that looks like. It's also on the screen outside of where that video ad is running. That's a linear ad. But those are kind of the main, some of the main formats on the desktop. You also have what's called nonlinear ads or overlay ads, which is really just a banner on top of the video content. And we'll talk a little bit about this, but nonlinear ads are not really being leveraged in the mobile space just because of the size of the screen. So I'll give you an example that will make that more clear. But mostly what we're talking about in video is really more similar to kind of these linear ads, pre-roll, post-roll, mid-roll ads. So this is an example on YouTube of either, some kind of linear ad and then a companion ad that is in the right rail where those kind of orange birds are. Right? It could be where a companion ad may be being run. So that's an example that you guys are probably used to from the desktop. And then this is another desktop example of an overlay ad. So you can see this 10 minutes, 10 questions, 1 epic prize. And that banner that overlays the video content is a nonlinear ad overlay ad. This is not really being used in mobile because while in this case the kind of coffee table can be covered up with a banner and you can still see the people. You can imagine in a smaller screen that running an overlay ad would really just cover up all the screen of where your content, your video content is. So we don't really run, or most people don't run, anything related to an overlay or nonlinear ad when it comes to in-app video ads. So this is more, I think, a desktop phenomenon than a mobile phenomenon. So now I'll show you examples. You're not going to get to hear the sound on the webinar, but hopefully you can see the sprint ad running. This is an example of a linear VAST ad on mobile. It's a full screen interstitial. The consumer has turned their phone into landscape mode so that you can see that full screen play when it plays and is watching that video play. So this is really a standard video that would have been shot for desktop, but is being leveraged in full screen video interstitial space on the mobile devices. And this is an example of a native video ad that could be running an in-feed placement. And I think this is going to be something new that InMobi is rolling out in its SDK right now, and will be available to some extent in Q4 and then in Q1. At least on the in-app side. More of this inventory, I think, for many of the people in the ecosystem is still on the mobile website. So in-app's a little bit newer for native video. But it's going to be interesting, and I just put this question out here as something to think about as we enter 2016, is how we, from a viewability standpoint or a metric standpoint, think about native video a little bit differently, because obviously a consumer can scroll past those ads. So skippability is a little bit different when it comes to native video placement. So this is something new that's coming out in the in-app side, at least for mobile, and I wanted to at least highlight this as something to keep an eye on and to really work with your partners to understand the right metrics for tracking of success. So at least on the VAST video ad side, there's a few best practices that I wanted to share that are pretty important. As I said, we've done a lot of work on the in-app side to make sure that a desktop or standard VAST can work. But in order to make that possible, we need to make sure that any of the VAST tags that are sent to us have MP4 files as one of the file types included. That enables your VAST tags to run across all types of mobile devices and OSs. So that's really should be a base requirement for what's included in your VAST tag when you're working with partners on the mobile side. We have suggestions here for the different types of resolutions that we'd want supported so that we can match the right resolution quality with the bandwidth and of both the device and what connection speed that consumer's on. So that's another thing to make sure that you're including. Most of these VAST ads are right now 16:9 aspect ratios. We'll talk a little bit in the future about vertical ads and what we see coming and what that means in terms of a change in the aspect ratios and how the actual video is filmed at the time of filming. But most of these are 16:9 aspect ratios to run in that interstitial inventory that you saw in landscape mode with that sprint ad. And right now, different publishers have recommendations, but we recommend 15 seconds in terms of the length of videos for the mobile devices. 30 seconds or longer form videos like a minute tend to be quite a bit too long for people in the in-app experience, because the interstitials are run as if they're television commercials that intersect the content and pause the content, just like linear ads on the desktop side that we talked about that are interjected between content. That's the same dynamic for video interstitials. So they really do parallel each other, and the consumer really is taking a break between content that they're watching. You may have heard a lot about iOS 9 and the rollout or upgrade of your own device. Apple has now pushed for SSL compliance, so you should make sure that your VAST tags are SSL compliant, and those can be sent that way for both iOS and Android. While Google hasn't yet moved the Android platform to an SSL compliant, OS, it does accept SSL compliant tags, so you might as well just start sending them in both formats so that you're kind of ahead of the curve of making sure that you can use those on iOS as well. We suggest including a course header and then not having more than one wrapper Otherwise, that will really dramatically affect your performance on the in-app side. So this is if there were two big takeaways on best practices, making sure you have an MP4 file included and making sure that you don't have, you only have one wrapper included in that file is the most important things to ensure that you have strong performance across all devices and strong kind of render rates, completion rates for your videos. So hopefully these are helpful best practices for you if you want to use some of your vast tags on the in-app video experiences that are available. Now we'll talk a little bit about MRAID, which is the other type of format for video ad experiences that are interactive. This is an example of an in-banner rich media video ad that runs with 300 by 250 banners, either on tablets or mobile phones. You can see that it's not going to be the most common ad size for mobile, particularly on a smartphone, because it takes up so much of that screen. It's probably more common to see in tablets. It was mainly leveraged because it was an existing ad size on the desktop side, so many of the clients wanted to use that same kind of creative. But I don't think this will continue on smartphones to be that big, but certainly you might see some of this on tablets as an opportunity for running in banner rich media video ads as you go out and buy and execute campaigns. So this is an example of an MRAID video ad that's an expandable video ad experience. You can see the McDonald's, 300 by or 320 by 50 size at the top of the banner, and we'll show you how this plays. So this is an MRAID interactive video. It's going to take you to an interactive landing page after the video plays. This video was shot in 16 by 9 aspect ratio, which is sort of the standard aspect ratio for videos generally on the desktop side as well. But I can show you when the consumer is holding their phone vertically, as you can see in the screenshot now. I'll show you what happens with that video in terms of how much space it can take up. You saw in the Sprint ad when a consumer turns their phone sideways that it takes up the full screen. But this McDonald's ad is going to show you when a consumer is holding their phone in portrait mode, what happens. Let me click on the next slide for you. So this is the video. You can't hear her singing the song about the hamburgers for McDonald's, but there's a song that plays. And you can see that the aspect ratio of 16 by 9 is being maintained, which only enables you to use a component of that screen in order to maintain that aspect ratio when the consumer holds the device in portrait mode. They move to landscape mode. Obviously, it will take up that full screen, similar to what you saw early on in the Sprint ad. But in this case, the consumer's in portrait mode. It takes up that small screen, plays the video, and then you land on an interactive landing page. In this case, it's going to show you your nearest McDonald's to where that consumer is at that time, leveraging location information and an interactive page to kind of get directions from that. So this is a great example of an expandable video ad that ends up with full screen experiences from banners, and I definitely wanted to make sure to include this because I think on the desktop side, many banners are run that aren't rich media, especially I see that on programmatic buying, whereas in the in-app side of the world for programmatic buying, a majority of ads are rich media experiences because clearly this is a wonderful experience to be able to take up the full screen, not have clutter, have all this interactivity and rich capabilities that can be brought in, and that's coming from a standard banner side. So I wanted to make sure to include this as well in terms of one of the options for using your video assets in terms of mobile in-app buying. And we just have a few more examples, and we'll get to some exciting new stuff that's happening as well. So this is another MRAID ad. It's an interstitial video ad. This is taking up the full screen. This is also shot in 16 by 9 ratio, which is why the video plays kind of in the center horizontal stripes similar to McDonald's. But then they have calls to action that have been built around that video. In this case, it's getting the app. But you can see kind of different things that you might be able to do for your brand and using this interstitial video ad. This comes not from a banner expandable, but from one of those kind of similar to linear ads, the pre-roll, post-roll, mid-roll, where a consumer is watching content on their app, and then there's an interjection where the interstitial ad plays, and then you go back to the content. So very similar to those linear ads on the desktop side, but these full-screen interstitial video ad units that are now happening on mobile in-app video. Okay, so we'll go to the next. So this is a beautiful ad. It's Netflix's Narcos, which is too bad you can't hear the sound, but obviously super exciting television series that they released. This is a great example of vertical videos, which you may have been hearing about. We are seeing more and more advertisers in mobile taking advantage of this. It does require that the video assets are filmed in 9:16 aspect ratio. That essentially means that the video is held, the camera is held in portrait mode when it's filmed. So the asset we get, we can maintain that aspect ratio in 9:16, but use the full screen edge to edge while a consumer holds their device in portrait mode and doesn't have to switch to landscape mode to get that full screen experience. So M-Rate or VAS could be used for vertical videos. The key thing is really getting more of a mobile first video asset, which has this 9:16 aspect ratio. So I do think that this is going to be increasingly leveraged by brands, and especially as you see the usage for video is so high on the in-app side and on smartphones in general, and this is such a beautiful experience that really enables a complete takeover on the phone. So I wanted to make sure to show this to folks because obviously that happens. A lot of this video creation assets happens very upstream and takes a while to get in place. But we certainly have seen 4 or 5 major advertisers over the last 3 months really starting to have vertical video assets. So I encourage folks to look at that as they work with their brands. Whoops. So some best practices for rich media ads. So the first thing is, in all cases, autoplay is really being supported, whether that's an in-banner rich media ad, so that 300x250 you saw, in the expandable ad experience where the user really initiates that autoplay by clicking on the banner and then the next screen, that McDonald's video clip played. That also obviously is an autoplay from that point on. Or in the interstitial video experience where the content is taking a break, the publisher's really inserted this almost commercial break, and that obviously starts autoplay right away so the consumer doesn't have to wait. That's one thing I think that the in-app world does a great job on, is you really don't sit and wait for buffering or see those kind of turning clocks. All of these are really autoplay experiences that work consistently across all the devices. So that's important to make sure that you support that in the creative side. Typically on the in-banner videos, they have sound off. So you might be on a page and you don't just have sound blaring at you. The sound is user-initiated for the in-banner experience. And then skippability is not applicable on the in-banner side. That video is just playing as the consumer is on that page, and just depends on whether they want to turn the sound on. For expandable videos, as the user has already initiated the interaction with the click on the banner, the sound is on that expandable screen, on that full screen experience, so that they have a normal experience to their video watching. And then skippability, you want to send 2 sets of creatives and support both delayed skip and non-skippable creatives. Obviously in the expandable videos, since it's already interactions, this doesn't matter, but in interstitial videos, it will matter for full screen. So on interstitial videos, we talked about their autoplay because the consumer is taking a break from content. They have this commercial, so it plays right away, and that's been pre-buffered and pre-cached, so it's a really good experience. And then the sound on or off is publisher controlled, so that can vary depending on the inventory of whether the publisher wants that to play with the sound or they want the user to have to initiate the sound. And then skippability for interstitial videos tends to be either, at least on InMobi, it's either delayed skippable, so the consumer has the option to skip it at the end of quartile 1, so that's around 3.5 seconds for a 15-second video, or it can be non-skippable. So this really ensures high viewability rate. So while we'll talk a little bit about viewability in terms of where the industry is, but the format itself it lends itself to very strong performance because you do have that full screen, you don't have the clutter, you're guaranteed to be taking up edge to edge on the screen, and then you have either delayed skip or non-skippable inventory for interstitial videos. And then we talked about the 15 seconds. So the direct metrics are really the same that you want to be tracking, but I'll talk specifically about viewability and where things are. And I'm sure Leo's been really involved in this, and MMA has been involved, but we'll talk about kind of where the industry is right now in terms of viewability for in-app. Oops, sorry, go back. So as I said, I think the experience itself lends itself to high viewability in terms of full screen, autoplay, delayed skip or non-skippable inventory. But right now, the MRC hasn't yet published its guidelines that are specific to in-app mobile inventory and viewability. They are working on that. There's many folks, including the MMA, that have submitted many points of view, InMobi as well, for the MRC to review. So hopefully their standards will come out relatively soon, but I don't think there's a set date yet. And many of the third-party services, obviously they can't be MRC accredited, and some do offer the capability for some level of viewability metrics, none of which can be MRC accredited yet, but some don't even offer those capabilities. So we'll vary by kind of partner that you have, how far along they are in terms of in-app, and then whether we all agree that that's the right viewability standard. So it's a little bit hard. I've heard people are using kind of viewable areas like mobile web to kind of benchmark things, or just recognizing that they need to work with a partner to understand the render rates and the performance of those ads until the viewability metrics are in place. So it depends on how you want to move forward, but this is where things are in terms of industry standards around in-app viewability, whether that relates to video or other ad formats.
And this is Leo. Could I just weigh in here a little bit while you have
Sure.
that MRC page up again?
Sure.
I have been involved, the MRC and the MMA have been involved with other industry groups, obviously. There is current guidance, interim guidance from the MRC on viewability for in-app. They've updated the guidance for mobile web, but we have been doing, the MRC has been doing an exhaustive analysis of vendors and how they're capable of doing in-app viewability measurement. It looks like there's more than one, probably two vendors who will be provided with MRC accreditation this month. So it is what was originally thought to be an extremely difficult challenge to first measure and viewability in-app and then deliver viewable ads in-app. Many of the vendors and the purveyors of viewability services are stepping up and helping resolve those issues. So within this month, we will probably see a couple of accredited vendors who are able and proving that viewability is measurable and is possible in an in-app environment. So stay tuned, but we should be hearing very soon that this is something that's being solved for now.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is great, because as I said, I mean, I think the format itself is super strong. So I think the sooner the better from our perspective. Yep. You know, I encourage people to start buying these campaigns, maybe recognizing that their viewability partners may not be able to track it as well as they want until maybe later this quarter. Hopefully this new time period is right, because that's very good news.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, thanks.
So just one other thing, we do see a lot of location signals being used, often in those rich media experiences or from a user targeting and making sure that the videos are relevant for those consumers based on location. So location-enabled ads, you know, for example, we're seeing some coming from the political side for political campaigns, or, you know, you see this example for McDonald's already, but those two seem to be you know, being leveraged really well together. So I just wanted to call that out, and that's something else that obviously the in-app side is doing a great job on, is around these location signals and combining that with video.
And just let me add to that very good point. Location and video are proving to be very effective according to our SMOX research, which is currently in field, and we've been getting great results from the likes of Walmart, Coca-Cola, Mastercard. And the combination of location and video is really better than demos in video or demos alone. So this is a really great combination of tactics to take in mobile.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of a two-power punch. And then we don't need to do the business challenge. I think this is, what we wanted to share with you guys today is just, hopefully getting people comfortable with the different types of video interstitial, what does it mean, and different types of ad formats that were available on the in-app side. So I encourage folks to do more campaigns. I think it's a great area for folks to leverage. Happy to answer any questions as well if people have them.
Okay, there's a few questions here, Ann. One has to do with you were talking about the whether an ad is going to be skippable, non-skippable, autoplay, and so on. Have you found whether certain techniques are better within certain genres? For instance, in games, as you mentioned, there's a natural pause between levels. That's a perfect time for a non-skippable ad, I would guess. And it's probably the best way to sell it, and it's on autoplay. But is there something similar for news or entertainment or sports? Have you discovered any specific ways to go given the genre that you might be buying?
Yeah. So whether the ad is skippable or non-skippable is really a publisher control feature. So I encourage people on the advertising side to support both formats in terms of creative, so they can use all of the scale. And then you'll have different types of metrics in terms of completion rates that will be possible in those two formats. I agree that the non-skippable ad format tends to be more commonly leveraged within gaming because there is often an opt-in component to the advertising where the consumer may be rewarded with something as a part of that experience for watching it. So they say, yes, I'm willing to watch this video and I get this. Now, there are some non-skippable formats used by publishers that aren't gaming, and there's certainly certain gaming publishers that don't want to participate in non-skippable formats, and they use skippable formats. So it will vary for what the publisher thinks right for their consumer base. At least from an advertising best practices, I think support for both creative formats and then use of them and then measurement of the metrics in the right way between them is the best thing to do.
Yeah. Someone has a question about MRAID, suggesting it comes off essentially as a display standard. What are your thoughts, Ann, for MRAID plus repaid guidelines, and how is it being adopted in the industry for video ad serving?
So this is definitely a question for our lead product manager, XP, who's I don't think on this call, but happy whoever has it if they want to follow-up chat with him. He runs our video product. We are involved in the early discussions with the MRAID committee and IAB to actually try to figure out what should that extension be around VPaid. And some of this does tie back to viewability and what happens with the MRC standards on viewability. We've also been working with the major buying platforms on the DSP side, DBM and some of the other major platforms to understand how they want to try to bridge between their desktop VPaid standards and the MRAID standards. So I don't think that all of that's been figured out in terms of how they want to do that extension yet. And I think the first step is really on the viewability side with MRC because some of the reasons people want to leverage VPaid is because of some of the viewability standards I think that have been leveraging that form.
That's right. As a matter of fact, as we've been examining viewability vendors, it would seem, and publishers who use these, the MRAID and VPaid guidelines are almost critical to making sure your ad is viewable. So, I think the lesson there is that abiding by as many industry standards as you can is going to help achieve effectiveness through first viewability and then ad location and then, bring some creativity and innovation to the table, and you can really do wonderful things with mobile video.
Exactly. I feel like a lot of the capabilities of VPaid on the desktop side have talked about in terms of interactivity, all of those were already possible and being leveraged for a long time on the in-app side for video using MRAID, right? So then it comes down to kind of viewability and where are we moving as an industry for in-app viewability. And once that's in place, I think folks can then kind of figure out, is there something else that needs to be extended on MRAID or not in terms of, capabilities.
Yeah, I wanted, I'm kind of help address a question that you actually answered, but you did mention that there is a number of different metrics that can be used to track the effectiveness and performance of video, and I'd encourage people to think long and hard about the different metrics, and also go to our MMA website. There is in the program pages, we have something called programmatic, and in the programmatic page there is a navigator. It's a tool that allows you to look at performance versus branding metrics and how they work in mobile, and specifically how they might work in a programmatic environment. But so to answer some of those questions, InMobi will get these questions and we'll be able to follow up with you and answer in more detail, but you can also find a tool on the MMA website. But another question has come in, and it says, what do you think about the chances of a 10-second ad becoming more popular than 15? And I'd add, will vertical video, given that it's a unique format, is that going to be widely available in 10 or 15-second forms?
Yeah. So very good questions. I had heard from some of the buyers that Snapchat was out talking about 3-second videos and 9-second videos. I'm not close enough to know if that's the case, but that's what I've heard. I do think that video length will continue to decline. That video will be much more, in terms of supply, will actually go up in terms of the formats that are available, in terms of the types of ads we're running. I think people like video experiences on the consumer side, but they may not be willing to sit through as long of videos, right? So I think the length will eventually go down over time. Right now, 15 seconds is, people have those clips generally, and so it's a good happy medium. Is it the best thing for all experiences? Definitely not, and I think we're going to have to figure that out as we move forward and really look at these metrics. In terms of 9:16, I am hopeful that more and more videos are shot in a 9:16 aspect ratio. At least from InMobi's perspective, 100% of our video, full screen interstitial experiences, so all what we've been showing you today, we can support 9:16 if we have the asset from the buyer. So at least in terms of scale, reach, targeting, audience overlays, everything that we can do, typically with video, we can do that across all of our inventory and support vertical video as well. But we just need that, the actual asset itself to be filmed differently. So I'm hopeful that it'll grow in terms of creatives that we see, and I am pretty optimistic, seeing that we've already seen quite a few big campaigns come through with vertical video assets, and I feel like it's pretty early days. So to already have had some of these, the Netflix ad's amazing, and to already have had that is terrific news for the industry.
Yeah. Now, Tommy, one more question having to do with the two. You talked about two aspect ratios, and both were considered, important. One was the 16:9, which is, when you have an MP4 in one single wrapper. Is there a challenge when that is a preferred form, and then there's the vertical video, which is kind of the reverse numbers, 9:16? Does that suggest that creatives are going to have to develop two different sets of creative in order to achieve effective reach across the mobile platform?
Yeah, so majority of content experiences are held, you hold your phone in portrait mode most of the time. You don't often hold your device in landscape mode unless you're playing a specific type of gaming experience.
Right.
So the most common way. So the reason 16:9s are being used today is because that's what's existed from the desktop side and have been available. There's no reason that VAST as a standard can't support vertical videos. 9:16, and if you moved all of your content from mobile into that format. It would really be a majority of the way users experience the creative. But yes, likely, especially from a cross-screen standpoint or from a multiple device standpoint outside of mobile, it really means that you're going to have to, you would ideally want to shoot videos in both formats, which does, I think, increase production costs. So I don't know that side well enough, but I would suspect it does.
Yeah, it sounds like that. Okay, we do have a question come in, and I'm not sure we can answer it, but will Apple's new ad blocking policies have a severe impact on current monetization models? What are your thoughts on that? I don't think there's an absolute answer, but what are your thoughts, Ann?
Yeah, so we've only been covering in-app inventory in the discussion. We haven't been covering mobile web inventory. Ad blocking right now that's being put into place on Apple devices is impacting all browser experiences. So all mobile web experiences are included within that browser experiences, but they are not yet impacting any of the in-app inventory. So none of the video inventory that we have on InMobi is being impacted right now because it's 100% in-app. So no ad blocking is right now. It doesn't work in-app. There's many ad blocking apps out there that actually help consumers block ads in mobile web, right? So that's why it gets a little confusing to understand where the impacts are. That doesn't mean to say we shouldn't do a great job of trying to get the most relevant ads that consumers really want to see as an underlying important trend. But at least right now, from an inventory perspective in Q4, I certainly think getting in place, your buys for in-app video programmatically or through a managed service I/O process for in-app is actually even more important, just because you know that inventory is going to be impacted by ad blocking, which in particular I think is being leveraged a lot by male millennials. And so if that audience is important to the buys you're executing, it'll be even more important that you execute some of that on the in-app side to make sure you're still reaching that target market.
Okay, terrific. Okay, we don't have time for any more questions, but again, people who have asked questions can receive a follow-up from the folks at InMobi. If you want to find out more information about things that Ann's been talking about, you can send an email to efficientbuying@inmobi.com. But just before we sign off, I just want to let people know about a few things that the MMA is doing. We have a continuing webinar series. The next two webinars are Tuesday, October 8th and Thursday, October 13th. Go to our website to sign up for those. We have forums, 4 forums before the end of October in Indonesia, Mexico, Spain, and Vietnam. As a member of the MMA, you can get involved in any of our programs, from text marketing to native advertising to attribution, and we welcome all members to join anything. Additional resources, we have Smart Brief Daily, we have Mobile Smart Fundamentals that comes out occasionally, we have social programs that you can get involved with. Members can access the Case Study Hub, which this year we'll probably have over 800 case studies, and all our webinars are in the archive. And just in case anybody wonders, everybody who's signed up for a webinar will receive a follow-up email that will provide you a link to the webinar and a link to the presentation. So remember to sign up. Even if you can't make the webinar, you can always get back and find it. So we want to thank you all, and we look forward to you coming back to the next webinar. We want to thank our special guest, Ann Frisbie, and you were great as always. Great, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.